A few nights ago, the nation watched as King Charles stood in the immaculate sun-drenched gardens of Windsor Castle, delivering a sincere and gentle plea for British farming to return to nature. It was a vision of harmony and heritage. But miles away, in the muddy reality of Diddley Squat, Jeremy Clarkson was watching with a cold cup of tea and a bank balance that doesn't care about poetry. Clarkson has hit back with a warning that is currently echoing across every rural pub in Britain. Nature does not send invoices, banks do. This is no longer just a debate about soil, it is a high-stakes clash between royal idealism and the brutal mathematics of keeping a country fed.
The conflict isn't about intentions, it's about the spreadsheet. Clarkson reveals a reality that the documentaries often ignore. An organic farm, praised for its harmony, typically produces around 2 tons of wheat per acre. A conventional farm, using the modern methods the king wishes to move away from, produces closer to 8. This isn't a marginal difference, it's the difference between a nation that can feed itself and a nation that faces a total collapse in food output. Clarkson's message is blunt. If Britain follows the Windsor model, the food won't magically appear. It will be imported from nations with lower standards and higher carbon footprints, while British family farms go bankrupt.
Agricultural policy is being written in comfortable offices by people who will never stand in a field at 6 a.m. wondering if their crop will cover the loan they took out to plant it. When a policymaker gets it wrong, Clarkson argues that caring without consequence is easy, but real farming is an unforgiving industrial process conducted under extreme financial pressure. By removing the mortgage from the conversation, the ideals feel light and noble, but to a farmer, they feel like a death sentence.
The danger, as Clarkson sees it, is that Britain is currently exporting its production and importing its risk. By banning fertilizers and pesticides at home, the UK isn't saving the planet, it is simply moving the pollution elsewhere. We are importing food grown with chemicals Britain has banned, while driving the most environmentally conscious farmers out of business. It is a strategic weakness dressed up as environmental leadership. Rural communities are panicking because they see a system that demands compliance, not cooperation. A system that values virtue signaling over hard-headed honesty.
Jeremy Clarkson isn't arguing against a greener future. He is arguing against a blind one. He is asking the one question that the palace speeches never answer. Who pays the price if this experiment fails? King Charles speaks for the generations to come, but Clarkson is speaking for the generation that is being asked to go bankrupt today. The land does not respond to speeches, and neither do the banks. As Britain remains stuck between royal visions and rural reality, the clock is ticking on our food security. The strange death of British farming may not be caused by pests or weeds, but by good intentions that simply forgot to do the maths.
In the time it has taken you to watch this opening sequence, another 3 British businesses have just been ransacked. This isn't a spike, it is saturation. 530,643. That is the number of shoplifting offences recorded in a single year across England and Wales. That translates to 3 thefts every single minute, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. But these aren't just numbers on a Home Office spreadsheet. They are the sound of shutters coming down permanently on your local high street. We are witnessing the total collapse of deterrence, where fear has quietly changed sides, moving from the criminal to the shopkeeper. Today, we look past the petty crime label at the institutional lid being kept on the lawless transformation of Britain's towns.
Let's look at the data. In London alone, retail theft has surged by over 40% in just 12 months.
But don't make the mistake of thinking this is just a hungry person stealing a sandwich. This is organized retail crime. These are groups moving with precision, using lookouts, getaway vehicles, and social media to coordinate hits. They know the response times. They know the £200 threshold for prosecution. They understand the exact limits of an enforcement system stretched so thin it has officially snapped. Officers admit privately that calls are stacking faster than units can respond. When crime operates in plain sight without fear of consequence, control disappears. What remains is a cycle of confidence crime, where the criminal knows the state has essentially surrendered the ground.
This pressure doesn't stay in the aisles, it spills directly into your wallet. Retail crime is now draining £4.2 billion every year from the UK economy. That is £2.2 billion in direct losses, and another £1.8 billion poured into guards, reinforced doors, and body cameras for 19-year-old shelf stackers. Here is the hard truth. That money doesn't vanish. It is recovered quietly, item by item, from your pocket. Prices rise not just because of inflation, but because of theft. This is a hidden security tax passed on to every law-abiding citizen. While the media talks about a recovering economy, 17,000 independent shops are projected to close by 2025. We are seeing the creation of retail deserts, where you can't buy fresh food or pick up a prescription, because the risk of staying open is simply too high.
The high street was once the heart of our community. When you board up that heart, the community stops beating. The state calls this low level, but there is no such thing as low-level crime when it happens 500,000 times a year. To the viewers who stayed, you see the plywood, you see the security guards at the door of your local chemist. My promise to you is to keep documenting the decline that the mainstream cameras refuse to broadcast. We confirm that the broken windows theory is no longer a theory in Britain. It is our current reality. A country that forgets how to defend the small things will eventually lose the big ones. The shutters are coming down, and the silence from Westminster is deafening. 80% of all theft arrests on Britain's rail network, 36.6% of sexual misconduct arrests, 35.7% of violent crime arrests, 39.6% of drug-related arrests, all committed by foreign nationals who make up less than 10% of the population. The moment these numbers hit the public domain, they ripped straight through Britain's political calm, igniting a national argument that can no longer be softened, ignored, or explained away. These figures landed like shockwaves because they were not anonymous statistics buried in a report. They were a mirror held up to a country wrestling with a question its leaders have tried for years to blur. Is illegal immigration making Britons less safe? And tonight, that question has exploded back into the spotlight with a force that feels impossible to contain.
We knew the migrant crime was off the chart. You only had to look at Europe, where they documented it for many years, to know that. You cannot expect them to act any differently when they arrive on these shores. We are importing monsters, and our government does nothing about it.
There was no slow drip, no cautious rollout. The numbers hit Britain in one single blast, and within hours the mood across the country had shifted. Commuters on packed trains, parents walking their children to school, late-night workers returning home on dimly lit platforms, all began asking the same unsettling question. How did this imbalance become so extreme without anyone sounding the alarm? Social media lit up with disbelief, local forums filled with stories that suddenly felt connected. Across towns and cities, frustration hardened into something sharper, a sense that the system had been masking the scale of the problem, and that the public were only now seeing the truth. By the afternoon, Westminster felt the tremor. MPs reported inboxes overflowing with messages demanding to know how such disproportionate arrest rates were possible. Some pointed to failures in border control, others blamed years of timid policing, and a growing portion of the public concluded that the danger had been building quietly in the background, unnoticed or unspoken, until the new figures forced it into the open. What shocked people most was not just the scale of migrant-linked offences, but the feeling that no part of government seemed prepared for the backlash. For many Britons, the data crystallised what they had sensed for years, a widening gap between the lived reality of crime and the reassurances delivered by official voices. The figures didn't just spark a debate, they ignited a national reckoning.
If British numbers were startling, a case emerging from the Netherlands felt like a warning from the future. Dutch students were placed to live alongside 125 new arrivals in an initiative designed, on paper, to accelerate integration. Students were encouraged to help newcomers adapt, share daily life, and build community. What followed was chaos. Reports surfaced of intimidation, harassment, stalking, violent confrontation, and multiple allegations of sexual misconduct. One incident involved a knife, another involved a group assault. An official investigation confirmed the pattern. This was no misunderstanding. It was a systemic collapse caused by naive optimism and total disregard for safeguarding. For many in Britain, the Dutch story struck a chilling chord. It shows what can happen when ideology outpaces common sense and when governments gamble with the safety of young people under the banner of integration.
These developments collide with one of the most unstable political climates Britain has faced in years. The Starmer government, elected on promises of restoration and competence, now finds itself cornered. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has escalated deportations, tightened visa routes, and overseen the highest number of illegal working raids in UK history. But critics say these steps merely skimmed the surface. What intensified the pressure on the government even further was a wave of real-world cases that brought the issue into sharp public focus. One of the most high-profile incidents involved an Ethiopian asylum seeker who arrived in the UK by small boat and within days was convicted of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl and a woman in Epping, crimes that ignited angry protests outside the migrant hotel where he was being housed. Under the UK Borders Act 2007, he should have been moved into immigration detention for removal, but an administrative error led to him being released from custody, sparking outrage and feeding the sense that the system is disjointed and reactive rather than robust. For many Britons, this case became emblematic of a broader breakdown in enforcement and stirred anxiety that failures in border control can translate into real-world danger far closer to home. Digital ID proposals, introduced as a solution to verify legal status and stop unlawful employment, ignited a firestorm within civil liberty groups and Starmer's own MPs. The plan was watered down, not strengthened, precisely when the country demanded clarity and firmness. Meanwhile, Reform UK has seized the narrative. Migrant crime has become their political battering ram. Every statistic, every arrest, every high-profile incident becomes proof of a system in collapse. Whether one agrees or not, the message is landing. Public frustration is rising. Trust in institutions is thinning.
Behind the political drama lies a deeper, more dangerous problem, a crisis in policing. As migrant crime statistics dominate headlines, trust in law enforcement is eroding. Videos circulate of officers appearing hesitant or overwhelmed. Whether the footage is representative no longer matters. The symbolism is corrosive. A police force perceived as uncertain is a police force losing authority. One commentator noted that years ago the sight of a police officer on the street commanded respect. Now some younger people mock them. In policing, mockery isn't harmless. It signals a power vacuum. Another voice defended the majority of officers who serve under immense pressure. But even that defense struggled against the uncomfortable truth. When public confidence collapses, no policing system can function as intended.
Step back, and this crisis fits into a broader pattern. Across Europe, governments are toughening asylum rules, accelerating removals, and reassessing decades of integration policy. The United States has adopted a harsher border stance. France and Italy have moved towards enforcement-first immigration models. Migration is now the central pressure point of Western politics.
Britain is not unique, but its reckoning feels uniquely raw. There is a sense that the social contract itself is under strain. Communities that once felt stable now feel exposed. Public spaces that once felt predictable now feel volatile. The migrant crime debate has escaped the pages of reports and entered the emotional core of national identity. People are not arguing about numbers. They're arguing about safety, trust, and the fear that the state is no longer capable of protecting them.
The latest data did more than outline a trend. It revealed a wound, one Britain can no longer cover with cautious words or optimistic promises. And the question now hangs over Westminster, over every train carriage, every high street, every late-night journey home. How much longer will Britons tolerate a system they increasingly believe cannot protect them? The country is waiting for an answer, and patience is running out.